Hello, Jan. Good to see you.
Hi Nils, nice to meet you.
Yeah, excellent. We got a lot of comments from our live talk last year, last week,
Last week.
last
Okay,
week, and we have received again a lot of questions. And if you're ready, I would like to start
well,
now.
feel free to start. I'm really interested in the questions.
Okay. Excellent. So the subject was longevity. So longevity is for sure something everybody would like to have at the end, and it's all about prevention. And one question I, I had is, which I really like, is it really successful? Is it worth all the effort that you have to put in every day? So I don't know how much effort this person exactly putting in, but maybe you have an opinion
Well,
about it.
indeed that's the first question, which is important because it is a hard work and you have to do prevention your whole lifetime. So the question is, well, is it effective or not? And the good thing is, yes, indeed it is. So in theory, you can prevent 80% of all heart attacks and strokes which occur in the whole population. So that's really a high amount. That means from 10 heart attacks, only 2 are unpreventable. And I think that is really a great success of prevention. And it's easy to reach that goal. So it's not a big effort which you need. So, but I will explain it later, I believe.
All
So
right.
about 80% of all cardiovascular diseases are preventable.
Okay, you're speaking mainly at the moment now about cardiovascular diseases. Does it also affect on other areas?
Well, of course. Well, I'm a cardiologist, so my main issue is cardiovascular diseases, but I'm also a preventive medicine, and we know that if you treat the known cardiovascular risk factors, which I will explain later, you also prevent tumors and also other diseases like retinal damages, kidney damages, but you can also prevent dementia. And that's really
All
interesting.
right.
So that means, well, we thought for long term, everything is Alzheimer's disease and can't be prevented because it's just genetics. But it is not true. Nowadays, we know even Alzheimer's, the progression of Alzheimer's can be slowed by aggressive decrease in the risk factors, which means that we control blood pressure, that we lower cholesterol, for example, that we increase physical activity, we improve sleep quality, and so on. So it's so simple. It's just the basic principles. Be active, have a healthy body weight, sleep well, and have a low blood pressure, have a controlled blood sugar. And it is not only valid for cardiovascular diseases, I think it's valid for a lot of chronic diseases. And the physicians nowadays are great in the treatment of acute diseases. Well, if you have a heart attack or if you have a broken leg, you can treat that really perfect and easily. But chronic diseases is really hard to treat because it's not just drugs. It's you have to join the team as a patient and to do sports and to change your lifestyle.
Coming back to your core competence, you're speaking about the risk of getting a heart attack or a stroke. How could I know how high my risk for having a heart attack or stroke is?
Well, that's a typical question of my clients. So when they are in my office and they start with prevention, so we first collect all the risk factors, laboratory values, and so on, blood pressure readings, lifestyle issues, and so on. And then the first thing is that we have a look in a risk chart, and then we can calculate also, especially in comparison to 100% healthy individuals, what is the risk of a heart attack or a stroke within the next 10 years. And we build up risk groups. So we have the low risk groups, which has a risk of less than 5% in the next 10 years. Then we have the intermediate risk group from 10 to 20% risk of heart attack in the next 10 years. And then we have a high risk group, which need immediate treatment and therapy, which have a higher risk than 20%. And surprisingly, a lot of patients feeling 100% healthy are in the high risk group. So they even without feeling anything, they need immediate drug therapy and other help.
All right. So to avoid this kind of surprises, which examination should be carried out as a part of prevention? So what would you recommend to check?
Well, in prevention, it's always the same. So you should have, well, let's do the whole picture of prevention. So if you want to prevent cancer, so we have to see our urologist as a male to exclude prostate cancer. Then we have to see a skin physician.
How often, sorry, urologist?
Depends a little bit on your family history. So if you have a lot of, if your father or your grandfather has early prostate cancer, then you should see it more frequent, let's say once a year. If you have a lower risk, if the prostate is normal and all the laboratory values are normal, you should have a lower frequency, like every other year, for example. So, and the same is also valid for skin cancer. So depending also on the skin itself and also on the number of molds which you should have once a year or every other year a consultation of a skin physician. And then, of course, and that should be done really early, we need a blood sample. So if you're young, let's say 20 or 25, you should have one full blood work to see whether you have already some tendency towards diabetes, to high cholesterol, to problems with the thyroid or whatever. And then you can do it every 5 years. And at least with 40, you should have it more frequent. And especially a male is a high risk patient in cardiovascular disease. So at least with 50, he should see once a year his cardiologist. Well, the females have a little bit more time. They could start with it with 60. So, and then we have one thing, we have missed urologist. Well, of course, the females, they should see, of course, a gynecologist for breast cancer, starting with the age of 30, 35, to have the first speak with her or him at least, and then depending on the results, more frequent.
We have received just a question, how early would you suggest starting though? So I think you said blood work is 25?
Well, blood work could be between 20, 25, just once to detect genetic problems. For example, there's a high number in Germany, 1 of 100 has a genetic problem with cholesterol, for example. And this can be detected really early. So, and if you wait until you have the first problems, then you missed already a lot of opportunity to lower cholesterol or to treat high sugar values or whatever, or high blood pressure also. Mm. So that's the reason why it's important to start early, once in a while, and then, well, if there's nothing, well, you have 5 years or a little bit more where it's not so important to redo the test.
So I think I started with I even can't pronounce the word, but probably this is the reason why I have to see him more often. The urologist, I started probably with 35. And I do it always in November because it's a Movember when everybody getting the mustache, and this is always the time when I'm reminded to make an appointment. Dermatologist, I think when you are when you have such a light skin like we both have, blonde guys, probably even earlier. I think I started with mid-20 or something like that to have a skin screening.
Well, again, also here depends on your family risk, because we know that cancer, but also chronic diseases like heart attack or stroke, at least 50% are related to genetic backgrounds, and that means to your family history. So that's the reason why it's so important. First, look in your family and see what they have for chronic diseases, and then you know where you should focus on prevention should be. But you're absolutely right. Start early with prevention.
Mm-hmm. Colonoscopy, probably not that early, because
Exactly.
as long as you don't have any things in your family. But I think at the end there's always a kind of little risk in this having this examination. So probably mid 40.
Yeah, 40 it seems to be a little bit early. So the actual guidelines recommend 50. But maybe because of bad eating habits or processed food, we don't know it. We have an increase in colon cancer during the last decades. And that's the reason why it might be a good idea, especially when you have one case of cancer in your family, to start far earlier. But okay. Well, this should be discussed with your specialist in prevention. And also, if you are afraid of the diagnostic, well, you should have it maybe a little bit later.
All right. Coming back to your core competence, when did the first aging process in the cardiovascular system actually start?
Well, that's really an interesting question.
I think we have some
really
experts
early.
here.
Well, because the question is also when to start with prevention. And I've done scientific work for World Health Organization evaluating aging processes in the older ones, and also starting with 20. And even with 20, we saw first aging processes. But during a talk with a specialist in child health, he did pretty much the same work like me. He has seen the first aging processes, especially in the structure of the heart, for example, also in young obese children in kindergarten. And that means that prevention has to start also really, really early. And see, in the school of my daughter, when a teacher is ill, they cut the sports lessons. And that's exactly the thing what we don't need. So they especially the obese children, they have to have fun on activity. So, and that's the reason why prevention and school sports and also healthy nutrition in school is so important. And again, in the school of my daughter, what is important is the price of the food, not the quality. And that I think is exactly the wrong way.
Yeah, but I think this is a very German thing. So spend a lot of money for the car, but not for your health.
Yeah, absolutely.
We are talking so much about what is healthy, what is unhealthy, and I think it was one of the first conversations we had when we first met that you told me there's now something which is even more unhealthy than smoking. What was this?
Well, that's exactly what you're doing at the moment, all the day. So I know that you do a lot of sports, and and most of the patients having heart attacks or strokes have a metabolic problem, and the reason for that is that they are not active. That they're a couch potato, and sitting. I think we had a talk already about that. Is a next smoking. So we know that being a couch potato is equal to 20 cigarettes a day. So, and the good news is it's not necessary to become an athlete. So it's not necessary to do all the sports that you're doing. So it's also okay what I'm doing. So a walk with 10,000 steps a day and 150 minutes of endurance training seems to be enough to have the full preventive
150 minutes endurance training per day?
No, per week. So,
but 10,000 steps per day.
A day. Yeah. So, well, here in the office, I have 6,000 steps a day, and then I have a walk outside, and then I have my 10,000 steps. So, and that is not too much. So it's 10,000 steps is 7 kilometers. I don't know how much miles it is, but a day.
I don't know either. Maybe one of the listeners knows and can write it.
Well, maybe they can translate it. But also it's important that. Well, I don't like to go into the gym. So, and the good thing is a weekend warrior.
The good thing is they are closed now.
Well,
so you don't have to.
Exactly. But it's also good to know that a weekend warrior who doing all his sports at one hike or a bicycle ride at the weekend has the same preventive effect like a guy who spends 3 times a week in the gym. So, and that motivates me to have a bike ride at the weekends. So, it's a little bit different if you do strength-based training. So if you want to increase muscle mass, well, then of course you have to do one training, one day off, one training, one day off. But if you think about cardiovascular prevention, once a week, twice a week, 150 minutes is enough to have the full effect on prevention. If you do more sports, well, it is not harmful, but it will also not prevent you more. So. Well, and if you do too much sports like ultra marathon run or something like that, then you will increase your risk of getting a heart attack or stroke again.
Yeah, this is what I learned already. So this is what your colleague here in Hamburg is always telling me that with all the sports I'm doing, I'm again a risk patient for getting a stroke, which doesn't make me happy. But anyhow, I don't want to change anything. But is it all about sport or is it also about nutrition?
Well, if you think about prevention, 70% of the preventive effect, also after heart attack, if you think about secondary prevention, it's just activity. So activity is really the best in prevention. So that's important to know. And then long term, nothing happens. And then also nutrition becomes important. Well, and that's what we all know, and that's also what we explain to our clients, that it's healthy to reduce the food stuff, or especially to have long terms without food intake. So interval fasting, intermittent fasting, time-restricted feeding, everything means the same. So we are hunters, and that means we have a successful hunt and a lot of food, and then we have some days or hours without food intake. And that's so important now in today's life. We know we don't know too long, because the old studies about nutrition, you have to write down what you're eating. And in most of the cases, you do under-reporting what you're eating, because you forget at the end of the day what you've eaten and when you have eaten it. And so now we do this studies with an iPhone. So you take an image from everything what goes to your mouth. And since then we know that you get up early, you go to bed too late, and we are eating the whole day. And that's a problem. We are eating. And the most highest calorie intake is in the evening after work as a present, because we survived working day. So then we give us a present that we eat a lot of carbohydrates. And especially for the males, that will kill us. So all the males, important, you will die because of carbohydrates and late carbohydrates.
All right. So I have the feeling really when I'm reading anything about nutrition, then at the end I would say I'm still confused, but on a higher level. Is it really, for example, I think some years ago it was very popular to eat many small meals instead of having 3 big dishes. Is this something which is still the latest knowledge?
No, especially for the males, it's really not healthy. So, for example, it's so easy for us to survive even days without food intake. So we have a lot of clients here in our clinics eating nothing, just drinking tea or broth for 1 week, and they feel great with it. So, and that means our body is optimized for that. So our body is optimized as a hunter. This means for lack of food, and having frequent meals means also you have a lot of snacks. And that means you have a high sugar levels throughout the whole day. High sugar means that you have high insulin throughout the whole day, and insulin blocks fat burning. So that's the reason why it's important to have 3 meals, or better 2 meals if you skip the dinner, and to have nothing in between, so that your insulin level goes down and you have a high fat burning rate throughout the day.
I have a question here from Sabine. Is there any alternative to stains to treat high level of triglycerides, and how to maintain normal blood pressure without medications?
Yeah, indeed. There are 2 questions. So high triglycerides, if it's not a genetic problem, so then, which is called as familial dyslipidemia or hyperlipidemia, so then you can treat it just by cutting the carbs. Because what happens is when you eat a lot of carbs and you
So I can't hear you. I hope that everyone else can hear you. It's just my problem. So it seems that it was not only my problem. Let me check.
No, it was my problem, because the internet here in Bavaria is not always good.
To be honest, I haven't heard anything of your answer. Unfortunately, you have to start.
Nothing. Okay, let's start again. So the first question was triglycerides.
Yes.
So triglyceride will be produced by the liver when you eat too much carbohydrates, because there is a specific capacity to store carbohydrates inside the liver and the muscles. And if you
But
have more,
Nutella is still okay, or not?
Nutella,
Yes.
really not. Well, it's high fat, high sugar, so it's really the worst what you can do. But if you eat too much carbohydrates, also alcohol, my favorite carbohydrate, so then you produce triglycerides, and the triglycerides are stored in the fatty tissue. So if you have a problem with high triglycerides and you have not a genetic problem, then you should lower the amount of carbohydrates. So for
the good
most
thing
of the
is
meals,
that really, I can promise you, I'm never mixing Nutella with any alcohol. Never, never.
perfect. You will survive longer than me. Anyway, so cutting the carbs will reduce, and alcohol will reduce the triglyceride, and fasting, intermittent fasting, the best what you can do to lower triglycerides. To lower food intake and to reduce the times of the frequency of meal. That was the first question.
That was the first question. The second question was get the blood pressure normal or lower the blood pressure. Let me check. Yeah. And how to maintain normal blood pressure without medication.
Yeah. So well, so let's first start with cholesterol. So I have high cholesterol level, and I tried everything: sports, health, and nutrition, and so on. And you can't influence cholesterol such much. So maybe you can lower with lifestyle 10%. So well, that's a little bit frustrating, and that means a lot of males, especially with genetic problems, need drug treatment to lower cholesterol. But it's exactly the opposite for high blood pressure. So especially when you only have slightly increased blood pressure, let's say 150, 160, you can lower the blood pressure sometimes dramatically with nutrition. So if you, once again, if you skip meals, if you do fasting, for example, interval fasting, intermittent fasting, if you lose weight, and if you do more sports, we have a lot of clients here at the Lanserhof which stop with all drug therapy, even after the cure here in our hospital. So blood pressure lowers dramatically with lifestyle interventions.
And salt is also important.
Well, not in everyone. So we have this minority who have a salt-sensitive hypertension, and they have, of course, a benefit because we are here. We have low-salted meals. Yes, this is also a small part of lowering, but the strongest effect is that you eat less. Insulin goes down, and insulin stores salt and water in the body, and that means the blood pressure rises. So yes, blood pressure can be controlled just with lifestyle, but this is not so easy. So you have to be consequent. And it's,
what about something to eat? Like I have heard that beetroot, for example, is good for your blood pressure, or I don't know, curcuma also.
Also curcuma, and also
turmeric. The English word is turmeric.
Turmeric, curcuma, and also if you have arginine, which is an amino acids, and there are some supplements containing also arginine. This may help in moderate hypertension, but the strongest effect: eating habits, fasting, and physical activity. Because you see it when. Well, and stress reduction quite clear, depending on and also sleep. Yeah. So, and also again, if you talk about sleep, you have to think about sleep apnea. Sleep apnea means that you have a drop in oxygen during the nighttime. You have the whole night stress, and that of course also rises the blood pressure. It's a far higher blood pressure. So here I talk about moderate increased blood pressure, and you can lower and control it just by lifestyle. And that's also according to the actual guidelines. So if you have, starting with high blood pressure first detected by your physician, the first thing is you have 6 months or 12 months for lifestyle intervention. And if you're strict, you can be successful. By the way, also diabetes can be fully cured, not type 1 from the children. So the diabetes of the older ones, the obese ones, can be fully cured with aggressive lifestyle intervention. We have a lot of studies explaining that. So, but you have to be really tough. It's not so easy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, then we have directly the next question. What is fasting? Skipping 1 or 2 meals or the whole day, or with just water or tea? So could you tell us something about the possibilities of fasting?
Well, there are different possibilities. So, well, you can have an alternate day fasting, for example. So you eat one day, whatever you want, and the second day you eat nothing, just tea and broth.
Whatever you want, Nutella with alcohol?
Oh, well, even that may be possible, but I still don't believe that is healthy. So, well, one option is alternate day fasting, but I don't like that because that means that also at the weekend, maybe in the worst thing, if there is a case you have Friday and Sunday as alternate day fasting without food intake. I don't like that. So I personally prefer to have 2 days a week without food intake. That's easier, and they have the weekend where you can do almost everything what you want. Or the 16 to 8 interval fasting. So that means you have a breakfast, you have a lunch, and you skip the dinner. And it's important to do it like this, not to skip the breakfast and have a big meal for dinner, because in the evening you have an increase in melatonin that interferes with the metabolism, and that means you store everything what you have eaten for dinner. So that means have breakfast, have the main meal of the day at lunchtime, skip the dinner. So, and this is also effective, but don't be too strict, because if you want to be successful to control sugar.
Oh no, I think we're losing you again. Hello? It was my favorite part. You started the sentence with don't be too strict. I can't hear you, unfortunately. Jan? Seems. I'm sorry for that. Something about this intermittent fasting. We have lost him now. And it was this 16 to 8 version which he recommended. I think you all get it, that it is preferable to skip the dinner, not the breakfast. And now we try to get him back again. Just a second. Connection.
Well, it's me again.
I'm so sorry. You just started, don't be too strict, and I loved this introduction, and now you were gone.
Well, the problem is that the Lanserhof Tegernsee is in the middle of nowhere, and that's great for the cure, because there's no restaurant or whatever in the surroundings, so it's not so easy to cheat here, but also the internet connection is bad. So anyway, so don't be too strict means that have 4 or 5 days where you should be strict and follow 16 to 8 or whatever, some other restriction food intake. And at the weekend, enjoy your life and don't care too much about eating. So I myself, well, I'm working here at the Lanserhof Tegernsee, living on a small island. So that means I travel a lot, and my strict days are Monday to Friday, and Friday, middle of the day, I'm sitting when there's no corona in the Lufthansa lounge, drinking 1 gin tonic, and then I enjoy my weekend.
All right. Yeah, I think I do it more or less similar. I'm doing this intermittent fasting during the day, and on the weekend I'm having breakfast with my family and
Exactly.
Not caring so much about food. So not caring is probably saying a little bit too much, but nevertheless, it is. I don't want to skip any meals because they are so social on the weekend, and so I don't want to do this. I hope that we have answered. I think, nevertheless, it is very good to make once a year a longer fasting episode.
Absolutely. So I personally do once a year, a 10-day fasting episode most of the time in one of our facilities, and then it's easier for me to have intermittent fasting or some other interventions during the year. Yeah.
And to be honest, I'm not doing it to lose any weight. This is a positive side effect. It is really so beneficial for your health, for everything, for your skin, for your digestion, for your sleep, for everything.
Absolutely, and also for your health, because the cell functionality improves. We get rid of proteins which are less than functionality, Nobel Prize, or 2016, I think, was given for the description of the process which happens in fasting. So when you add fasting, you destroy old proteins. It's a lessen functionality. So this means your cells become younger. You prevent cancer. You activate stem cells. So fasting has such a lot of health benefit. And once again, you're a hunter, and your genetics haven't changed so much since that time. That means our metabolism is optimized for lack of nutrition, and our body can't deal with too much food ability. So that's the reason why we all become fat when we eat whenever we want.
Mm. Yeah, and I can just say, so becoming younger, this is really true. I'm 85, and I think I'm looking a little bit younger than this. I have the next
I will
question.
not comment.
My next question on the list here, not on my list, which is here on the timeline, is I take vitamin D 500 IU daily. Is that safe? It seems to me a little bit too much. What do you think? 500
or 5,000?
5,000.
5,000. That it depends on, but I think it's too much. So the normal dosage, which is okay for most of our clients, is something between 10 and 20,000 a week. Some clients, well, they need indeed such a high dosage, but this has to be controlled. So you have to take your D vitamin levels frequently, because low vitamin D, well, it's not healthy, we know it. So immune system is not effective. You have a risk of osteoporosis. Even you have a higher risk of coronary artery disease. But too high vitamin D levels is also not healthy, because that means you have a problem with atherosclerosis again, calcification of the arteries, kidney stones, and so on and so forth. So that's the reason why, if you have such a high dosage of vitamin D supplementation, you have to check it frequently. But, well, there are some clients who need such a high dosage. Yes, that's true.
Next question. During losing weight period, evening snacks are totally bad or reasonable?
Well,
depends.
Exactly. Depends. So if you're a male, then it's easy, because you can eat nothing and you're not hungry. And because males have a far higher sugar level. For them, it's fasting is just to control the brain, to control your addiction, and that's easy. But what I have to learn on my own is that the females are completely different. You can't compare females and males, because the females, when they eat nothing, they have really early a problem with drop in sugar level. So, and for that means that they get headache, bad mood, or whatever. So for females, tea fasting may be a little bit too strong, and sometimes they need a rice waffle. I think we discussed that last time also. So a rice waffle sometimes is good to control when you feel that you have to vomit, or when you feel that you lose consciousness, or you have dizziness, or you have severe headache. Then in the females, it might be a sign of hypoglycemia, low sugar level, and then a small snack, but a carb snack, not a fatty snack. So no nuts, better a rice waffle, may be good. So for the females, we offer also a higher amount for the dinner than for the males. So the males get broth, and most of the females here in our clinics or facility receive a soup with a small piece of bread, just to prevent the drop in sugar level. Because that's also not healthy. If you only have really low sugar, the body will not burn fat. The body starts to burn a lot of muscle mass, because you can change proteins to sugar. And if you need sugar, because you have low sugar levels, then you will burn the muscle mass. And that's the reason why we offer also a little bit of honey for the tea in the morning sometimes.
The next question is, what is the recommendation for iron deficiency?
Yeah. Well,
lack of iron, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. So iron deficiency is really common, especially in the females when they are not postmenopausal, and then iron supplementation is important. Like you can have it as there are some pills, or you can also, if you have severe iron deficiency, also iron infusions sometimes are highly recommended. Like we are offering also in our facility.
Sorry to interrupt here, but how do I know if I have it? Should I always make a test in advance, or should I also just take some iron in prevention?
Well, no, never in prevention, because iron itself is a poison. So, and that's the reason why most of the iron is bound to proteins inside the body. And if you have too much iron in the body, you have a risk of liver cirrhosis and liver cancer also. There are common genetic diseases which store iron because usually the absorption in the gut is really clearly regulated to prevent over too much iron in the body. So, and if this regulation is not functioning properly, then you can have an overabsorption. And most of the times, if you get a problem, you're male because you have no menses, no bleeding. That's the reason why the males got it earlier. So, and that's the reason also why you should not supplement without an iron testing. So typical symptoms, well, not all clients have typical symptoms, but if you feel tired, if you can't think well, you go to bed early, you can't concentrate, if the skin, especially the sclera, has got really white colored, so then this may be a sign of iron deficiency. But well, if you take it as a pill, it's okay, because most of the time the iron absorption is regulated. If you take the pill and you have enough iron, you will even not absorb it. But if you take infusion, you really have to be sure that you have a lack in iron.
All right. Then next question is here: chicken broth or bone broth?
Well, I think, well, in most of nutrition, we have no clear data for that comparison, because there was never done a study comparing these two patient groups. So, well, I can't give you the correct answer, but I think chicken broth may be more healthier.
I have always learned when you have a flu or a cold that chicken broth is pretty good, but
exactly. But I don't know how it is with weight loss.
Valid point. Valid point. A lot of broth have a very high salt content. Is that an issue?
Well, again, the question is whether you have normal blood pressure or high blood pressure. We know if we reduce salt in the food, and also especially, for example, in Finland, they reduce the amount of salt also in the processed food, and they can demonstrate that they have a lower blood pressure in the whole population. And
really?
That means, yeah, but well, this is minimal, so it's really mild changes. So, but yes, indeed, if you have a high blood pressure which is salt sensitive, then you should take care on salted food, and also you should try to reduce the amount of salt.
Well, so when I'm doing the cure by myself, I'm always preparing my broth at home just with vegetables, and I'm hardly don't do any salt on it. I'm just working with herbs, and it is also fine, to be honest. There's enough taste.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And the amount of salt which we are having in our normal food is more than 10 times higher than what is the minimum what we need in our daily intake. So we need small amounts, but our food is already so salted that it's really worse to try what happens with blood pressure to reduce it.
Here's the next question. How would you approach first-time fasting? I think it depends what kind of fasting, isn't it?
So you mean as a first-timer to fast? Well, in our clinics, we start not as aggressive in most of the clients with tea fasting at the first time, because the first cure is always the worst, because well, it's really tough for the metabolism, especially for the liver, because you never fasted before, and that means all the metabolic pathways which have to be activated in food restriction have to start by zero. That means the proteins have to be processed and so on. That takes some time, And that's the reason why you get headache, bad mood, and so on at the first time. And starting too aggressive means that you have a lot of side effects. And in the worst thing, you will never do fasting again. So that means the first fasting should be a little bit easier. So for example, like the Myers cure, which we're also offering in our facilities, with some bread and yogurt for breakfast and for lunch, and the broth or soup for dinner. So that's easier to survive, and it's a good first step in one lifestyle changes with fasting, with daily fasting. So most of our clients, they start here with a cure, then they know how easy fasting at least is after a while. So after 4 or 5 days, your metabolism adapted to a food restriction, and then for them it's then easier to continue with intermittent fasting, with 16 to 8 fasting, whatever.
Mm-hmm. The next question, I think, is very specialized. What would you recommend qua nutrition for someone with constantly cold hands and feet? Also qua nutrition, I don't know if I pronounce it right, it's QUA nutrition. To be honest, I've just Googled it. It seems to be something from Mumbai, but I don't know if you have any experience with this.
No, I've never heard that, sorry.
Me neither, to be honest. How much water per day?
Well, there's in medicine there's a common word. So this means everything is poison, and it's just a question of dosage. So it's valid for sports, it's valid for food, and it's also valid for water. So you can also overdose water intake and get problems with minerals and vitamins also. So, well, I think the best is to have between 2 and 4 liters a day. That's a good number. But not only water, not juices or whatever.
Or herbal tea.
Or herbal tea. So everything what is without calories, that's okay.
Oh, I'm not that sure if you are the expert with this, but the question is, what are the best supplements for healthy skin?
Oh, well, that's really not my issue. So
I think we will make another session with one of
exactly. So we have a lot of, well, we have a lot of specialists or naturopaths here, so they could answer the question easily. I can't. So that's a good topic for you for the next talk.
Yeah, definitely. Having a reading of 148 of glucose in the morning means the person is diabetic?
Yes. Well, not one single sugar reading is valid, because also if you get up too stressed, for example, well, you had a bad night and have a run to the physician to get the blood work done. So then for sure, because of stress hormones, you will have higher sugar levels. So, if you have 3 or 2 readings in relaxed situation with that kind of sugar, then of course it's a diabetes, yes. And then you need fasting or something else.
Is 20K...
I would not start. So once again, I wouldn't. It doesn't matter. I would not start with drug therapy at the beginning. So because our method here in the clinics is first to do lifestyle intervention and to demonstrate that it is easy to control sugar and blood pressure with lifestyle intervention. And only when you have high sugar level after the cure, then we would start with drug therapy. But especially if it's the first sugar reading which you have.
Oh no. I think maybe there's a kind of timer every 15 minutes, the connection getting bad. Jan, I can't hear you. I think I'm losing you again. I'm really sorry for this. I'm not that sure. Here we go again. He's reconnecting. And here we go. Jan, I'm sorry.
I don't know what is the reason. Maybe our clients here are looking too much Netflix or whatever.
The next question is 20K Pro D3 too much? I understand it
So
is
20K vitamin D.
20K vitamin D too much. So in a week, it's okay, isn't it?
In a week, it might be okay, but it is on the upper limit. So I would control it, check it once, and see whether you are within the normal values or if you're far away from that. So maybe I'm a little bit more strict than others, but just seeing a patient with kidney stones with vitamin D supplementation. But okay, she had 20K every other day. So.
All right. Where do you stand on drinking apple cider vinegar?
Sorry, apple cider vinegar.
Yeah,
well,
Apfelessig.
Yes, to be honest, I don't know. I've never tried it, and I don't know what is
I think
exactly.
it's disgusting, but I don't know the benefits of it. But one of my colleagues is having it every day. She looks healthy, but hi, Hedda.
Well, if you think that's healthy, so
I don't know, but it doesn't smell so good, to be honest. It's always not our favorite moment when she's pouring the apple cider into a glass. But anyhow, do you have any suggestion for naturally helping with hay fever?
Yes. Yeah. Well, the question is hay fever is related to high histamine intake. So, and if it's your period where you have problems with pollinosis or whatever, in this period you should reduce histamine intake. So, all foodstuff with produces histamine. So that means reduce wine, for example, reduce cheese, and so on. So have a low. So eat everything what is suggested in histamine intolerance. So, this will lower the amount of histamine, and this will also lower the symptoms of pollinosis. And other treatment options, in some cases, might be energetic therapies, which we've done in the Lanserhof, and also sometimes if you get injections with pollen which you react to, so then you can desensible your body, and it maybe you become more tolerable to these pollens. Horrible English at the moment, but I think hopefully you understand what I mean.
I have understood, but probably because I know the answer. So we just have a comment that apple cider with turmeric and lemon seems to be much. I don't know if it is more tasty or if it is just even more healthy. I don't know. Is it healthy to fast whilst taking metformin? Metformin, honestly, I also just Googled.
Metformin is clear. So metformin is a basic therapy if you have any
diabetes.
If you have diabetes, or if you even in earlier stages, if you become insulin resistant, it means you need more insulin to control the sugars than others. Metformin is known to prevent the development of diabetes. So diabetic drugs, especially metformin and also some other of the newer ones like Jardians and so on, they have a risk of side effects, of bad side effects being on fasting episodes. So especially if you fast for a longer time. So that's the reason why in our clinics, when you have a long-term fasting for 1 week or even longer, we stop metformin, and we stop also Jardians and other anti-diabetic drugs, but because of the well-known side effects like acidosis and so on. So, but if you do it as an alternate day fasting, for example, then it will not harm.
Mm. So what other foods are high in histamine?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know. You said cheese, red wine. I think
cheese, red wine, white wine. So
chocolate,
these
dark
are
chocolate.
the common ones which I know, but all the rest.
Sometimes I have the feeling that you're stopping the connection when you don't know the answer, but I don't know. Yeah, sorry for that. Like Dr. Stritzke said, also at Lanserhof Tegernsee, so the connection is unfortunately really not that good. But I hope that we will get him back soon. And how much coffee is too much coffee? Seems a little bit problematic to reconnect. So we are anyhow almost at the end of this session, but it would be helpful to at least say goodbye. Let's see, here he goes. Connection. Here we go. Hello, hello, hello. So I have heard that consuming local grown honey may help with hay fever. Is this correct? Do you have any experience with this?
So, well, yes, indeed. That's exact. So that's exactly the same what I suggested. If you get your honey from the area, from the local area where I live in, so it's really likely that inside the honey are pollens from which you react to. So, and that means that if you eat a lot of that, your body becomes more tolerant to it, and then you can.
You probably also gain some
fever.
weight if you eat a lot of this honey, but you get away from get rid of the hay fever. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it may also be the same that you get injections with. So you first do a test, then you know against which pollen you react to, and then you get in specific injections which are specifically made for your allergy. And from time to time, you get get rid of the problems.
Foods that help muscle soreness from exercise.
Well, so of
Say
course,
just bad connection and go away again.
Yeah. Well, what see is so once again for food itself. So it's important to know that the field of food intervention is really not scientific. Most of the food interventions have never proven in big scientific studies. So most of it is just a feeling that it helps or not. But what we do know is that especially if you have a lack of magnesium and potassium, then it's harder to do sports because your muscles become stiffer. And that's the reason why it's good to have capsules or supplements or drinks with some minerals during sports, or also if you are.
I hope that he will join again soon, but so here is again, just a second, reconnection. We will get the answer to how much coffee is too much coffee, I'm pretty sure, if you have a meaning. So Jan, before you're leaving me again, how much coffee is too much coffee?
Well, coffee itself is not a poison. We know it's there. We have a lot of studies. So we know that coffee is an antioxidant. It seems to prevent also heart disease, other cardiovascular diseases, and also it seems to prevent from dementia. So, but if you drink too much, you get problems with over acidity. You get problems with too much acidity also in the stomach and so on, and also high heart rate, arrhythmias. So
oh, here. Jan? Hello? We left him. We lost him again. So I think the hour is over also. So maybe we are using the last opportunity to say goodbye. If you reconnect.
So sorry, but I think we have to stop here because
I think also we have to stop here,
minute.
unfortunately. But we have answered, I think, all the questions which were on the timeline. We have almost answered all the questions on we have received in advance. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure again, even with this bad connection. And yeah, I hope we can see us again on another subject.
Well, it would be a pleasure to meet you again and hope you enjoyed the talk. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.